Now, I would like to give a little bit of essence of the teaching of Buddha. Because you see, actually the teaching of Buddha is extraordinarily vast. What Buddha taught alone, volume over 100. Not to talk about the work of the great Indian masters, with volume over 200. But what's wonderful is that even though the teaching of the Buddha is vast, very vast, but it can be essentialized. In fact, when Buddha was asked, what is the essence of teaching? In Tibetan it sounds like this, which when you translate to English roughly, it says, cultivate, commit not a single unwholesome action. That's the first one. Second, cultivate a wealth of virtue. Third, to tame this mind of ours. This is the teaching of the Buddhas. First of all, commit not a single unwholesome action. What does that mean? What it means is that, you might say, but how can I possibly not commit a single unwholesome action? What it really means, when the Masters explained, is that as much as possible, abandon all the unwholesome, negative and harmful actions which are the cause of suffering for yourself and others. That is to say, if you do not want suffering, then you must abandon the cause of suffering, which is ignorance, negative emotion, negative actions. On the other hand, if you want happiness, then cultivate the wealth of virtue, the second line of teaching of Buddha, which means as much as possible, adopt all the positive, wholesome, and beneficial actions of the body, speech, and mind, which are the cause of happiness for yourself and others. So therefore, if you do not want suffering, then you must remove the cause of suffering, which is ignorance, negative emotion, negative action. Is that clear? To put it very simply, and if you want to have happiness, the cause of happiness is wisdom, positive emotions such as love and compassion, and positive actions. In fact, many great Tibetan masters always say, if you cannot help, at least don't harm. Most important of all, don't keep malice, hatred in your heart. Don't keep a black heart. Most important is keep your mind and heart pure. In fact, the great master, Atisha, great Kadamba master, he often, whenever he meets people, he would always ask them, instead of asking them, normally we say, how are you, how's your family? You know, instead of asking that, he would say, how is your good heart today? The most important is the good heart. That's why when His Holiness, I had the great good fortune to actually arrange and also be part of His Holiness' first visit to the West in 1973. On those occasions, he always used to teach on good heart. And he always used to say, my religion is very, very simple. My religion is kindness. Is that clear? Now, you see, because if you look really deeply, I think he's done it this afternoon, spoke about not being foolishly selfish, but wisely so. Remember? Yeah. So therefore, if you really want to look out, you see, of course, taking care of yourself is important, you know. But in so doing, you have to do it what's really good for your long-term interest. And what is interesting is when you look in that way, you realize that actually harming others harms you, helping others helps you. Clear? When you realize that, then suddenly you realize, my happiness and my suffering is connected with happiness, suffering of others, so that we are all interconnected. And realize the interdependence. And through this interconnectedness, then it inspires altruism. Initially, you may be thinking of yourself only, your enlightened self-interest. But when you realize deeply that your happiness is connected with happiness of others, your suffering is connected with suffering of others, then you realize this inspires altruism. As the great Bodhisattva Shantideva, he said, all the happiness there is in this world comes from thinking of others. All the suffering there is in this world comes from thinking of yourself only. Is that clear? And then also, I think he's only spoke a little bit. You see, when you speak about what is the basic Buddhist philosophy, I mean, which is common to all schools, you know. I wanted to say one thing very briefly before we go further, is that actually these three lines, commit not a single unwholesome action, cultivate the wealth of virtue, and to tame this mind of ours, is actually related to the three yanas, or the three vehicles of the teaching of Buddha. The first time, commit not a single, I know there are many Buddhist practitioners here, so therefore you're not so unfamiliar, so I'll share this with you. Commit not a single unwholesome action is connect with the basic vehicle. Because in the basic vehicle, the one of the most, I'd say basic vehicle rather than the word hinayana. That's not so appropriate. The root yana or the fundamental yana. And in that you see one of the most important things, the practice of refuge. In the refuge, the precept, the most important precept is the precept of Dharma, which is non-harming. So therefore the first line, commit not a single unwholesome action, is related to non-harming, which is related to the basic vehicle of the teaching of Buddha. And also therefore is peace. Second line, cultivate the wealth of virtue, is compassion, related to Mahayana. Third, taming the mind, is Vajrayana. Even though, of course, taming the mind is the basis of all Buddhist teachings. Because as Dalai Lama often says, Buddhism is about transforming the mind. Now, when we speak about the basic view or the basic philosophy, philosophy is when you don't practice, you call it philosophy. When you practice it, you call it the view. What is the basic Buddhist philosophy is that everything is interdependent. Everything is interdependent. Just as we realize that when we harm others, it harms you. When you help others, it helps you. Is that clear? So that, His Holiness Dalai Lama says that philosophy, that Buddhist view is not just a Buddhist philosophy, but it's very practical, as he spoke a little bit this morning also. Like, for example, when we get angry, someone really pisses you off completely, makes you really angry, and that person becomes your target, anger grows and strengthens. This is when we don't examine, when we think that person exists independently. But when you look, really take a step back and really examine, as His Holiness encouraged us, very much teaching with the Buddha encouraged us to examine, to analyze. When you do that, you realize that there are many causes and conditions. It's not so simple that you yourself may be also implicated in that aspect. So when that happens, the intensity of your anger or the target of blame begins to slowly diminish. Is that clear? When that happens, then it really helps you to remove the violence in you. So it leads to the fundamental Buddhist action or conduct is non-violence, non-harming. Is that clear? View of interdependence inspires non-harming. Is that clear? That when you develop, of course, the view of interdependence more on a deeper level, it leads to shunyata, the view of the great emptiness in the Mahayana teachings. As well as when you develop the non-harming, more deeper way, it leads to also altruism and compassion. So basically, that these three lines embody the essence of the three vehicles of teaching Buddha. I remember one of my masters, Tingul Khyentse used to say, a great learned master would, from these three lines, will enumerate volumes. But the most important of all, you see, is to tame this mind of ours. That's the key thing.